What's going on, Soul Nation, and welcome to another New World Aeternum video. My name is Brian, if you happen to be new around here, and what we're talking about today is two main things. Season 7 has officially been delayed, and we're going to do some calculations as to when we might actually expect this update, but we also haven't seen any communication about this update. And to prove my point, right now in game, it says that the next season, starts, or season 6 ends here in 55 days, which puts us on the calendar to Monday, January the 13th, but yet in that time frame, and this falls on a Tuesday, which is when we typically see that. Now, just to make sure that I wasn't crazy, I had to go back and look at some of my old VODs from live streaming when the update for Aeternum dropped on the 15th, and it said 48 days, which puts it at Monday, December the 2nd, was the original target for the winter season for season 7. And so this means we have seen a delay of 42 days. Now, speaking of streaming, you might have noticed there have been less streams here on this channel, and that's because I've moved all of my live streams over to Ginger Prime TV. Between Ginger Prime and Ginger Loves MMOs, it just ended up making the most sense, and this also brings it in line with the Twitch Ginger Prime TV. So if you like live stream content, reaction content, check out the links in the description. Would love to see you over on that channel as well. But if you don't like live stream content, you like mmorpg content, well, you're in the right spot. And if I earn your subscription, if you find that sub button somewhere here on the page, sound off in the comments, just like KT Eden. Welcome in. I love when I get to say hi and to all the new subs around here, and thank you guys so much for the support. But let's talk about the delay, and then we're going to also talk about the patch notes that have come out, because there's some interesting adjustments that you might want to be aware of, but I'd love to have your feedback on as well. But first, we're going to start with our discussion, and then we'll go into the patch notes, and then we'll wrap up with our message of hope, as we usually do in these videos. First and foremost, I am frustrated that there is a delay in the season, and there hasn't been any form of real communication or roadmap delivered to us, the players. Now, as a veteran player, I think this stings worse. For the new players who are still working their way through, I would say, mountains and mountains of content, it is probably not as big of a problem. So there is going to be a line of demarcation in this conversation, and obviously I'm going to be speaking as a veteran player who has waited throughout 2024, who has been a champion of this game, and I guess a visible, critic, critic is the right word I'm looking for, a visible critic in terms of how they communicate. And this is what it is. Like, I actually think New World Aeternum has been a great experience. I've been able to play it. I've been playing it on my my Xbox Series X on my Rosa server, very casually, mind you. I've been playing it also here on my PC version, and that's the real downside of how they approached this game. It's great that it has cross play, but the lack of cross progression, it does feel very limiting to me in the long run. But that's just my personal gripe about it. There's no need to hammer that home repeatedly, unless for some reason the devs were listening to this video and they decided they also too wanted to make that change. I'd be pretty happy. Also, go look at all my feedback that I've written up. Would love to see those changes brought in to this game. I love this game. I love New World. I really think that from what it has done and what its potential is, it is a game that continues to evolve, and I continue to want to play it. Now, downsides as an adult with 6 kids, who are all in activities right now, we've been extremely busy this entire fall, but things are going to slow down in the winter months, and that's what makes this delay a little bit more of a bummer, because it's going right into my slow season. So thankfully, my slow season does go all the way through February, but that would have been some critical time to be able to jump in December. Now, what do I think this means overall? Do I think this means that there's danger or trouble with the development? Not necessarily. I think perhaps they were a little bit hyper aggressive on that date. That could have also just been a bug. They could have always been targeting January the 13th, but it still would have been nice to see some form of communication from them. I even asked in the Discord, hey, was there a news post that I missed? Is there something that I missed? And crickets. Nothing is really being talked about when I asked that question. And so if I'm wrong and they did post an update about that, please let me know. I'd love to be able to correct the record in this case. But still, where is the roadmap? That was the last video that I talked about. Where are the dev updates? And I think when it's all said and done, we're not going to see anything else this week. I'd love to be wrong, but next week kicks off Thanksgiving week. That's the holidays. Going into December, maybe they're going to sit down and talk with us like they did last December and talk about the winter update and going into 2023. I have hopes that they will, but if this pans out to be true, that we're looking at the 13th, well, that does give them a window into the first week or so of January. It really just depends, because we haven't obviously seen with the Aeternum's launch a real heavy reliance on the PTR. That's something that content creators jump in and, you know, kind of break down the changes and give you guys all the details about. I think it's a really good value add from the content creation perspective, but it's also kind of in a way that we're testing these games. And with the console players, I don't think that essentially makes the most sense. They're not going to have a PTR for consoles, but color me wrong if that ends up being the case. So I do think that with us looking at January and the development roadmap still somewhere on the horizon, whether they deliver it to us in December or in January, I honestly think probably they're going to default to January, namely because there's going to be just so much going on that it's going to be easy to forget any kind of messaging. And once they come out of the holidays and Christmas and people have, you know, played the content and are kind of getting to that point where they're asking the question, what's next? As long as they can knock it out of the park and really hit it home, especially to the veteran players out there, I think that's going to be the most important. The biggest aspect of all of this, especially when it comes to the veteran versus the new player mindset, is that I obviously think I'm very pro with there being new players in the game and they're enjoying it. I do think that we have to see some more content added for the veteran players, and whether that ends up being as a part of the season model, or if they're just willing to let the veterans kind of just go off and cool off for a little while and then come back strong with an expansion that's focused more on the expanding the game as opposed to like redesigning and redoing the game, which is what Aeternum has done a lot of work on. Despite the fact that we got raids, despite the fact they've added in content, it still just will never be enough to feed the hunger that is the veteran MMO player. Now, let's jump into the patch notes, because like obviously this is kind of a time frame. Obviously you can kind of hear that I'm a little frustrated, but they've made some interesting adjustments. So let's go ahead and talk about it. It kicks off obviously today, November the 19th. It's going to last about 2 hours for update 1.13. This is the big one they're going to have in Turkulon. That's going to be the big kind of event. I highly encourage you to jump into that. If you guys didn't see my last video, we go through the reward structure and so much more. So I think that is generally worth it. For the general fixes, they fixed a lot of things. So they fixed an issue with the raid, Barnacles and Black Powder, and Plunder, Barnacles and Black Powder faction missions. The chest inside the Barnacles and Black Powder expedition will now properly count towards the Plunder objective, and Admiral Black Powder and Nereid will now properly count towards the respective raid goals. They fixed an issue that caused players to get stuck when changing shards. The DirectX 12 beta client fixed an issue that could cause a hang or a crash when loading into the world on PCs with high core counts. They fixed various issues that cause crashes throughout the particle system. For the war, they fixed an issue that allowed defending players to gain entry into an attacker's camp. For the Hive of Gorgons, the Enchiladas, we'll just call it that, reward should now spawn in the middle of the area. They fixed an issue that could lead to being unable to respawn after death. They fixed an issue that prevented some PlayStation players from unlocking PlayStation trophies. They fixed an issue with boss spawns and expedition trials, and they fixed an issue that allowed players to mantle to areas higher than intended. They fixed issues that allowed players to climb up camp walls in war. For artificial intelligence updates, they fixed an issue that occasionally caused Typhon to get stuck and preventing progression. They fixed an issue where Huru could sometimes unexpectedly wipe the encounter if the last player alive had no death or revives remaining. They fixed a potential exploit that allowed players to defeat Avarice of the Eternal Pool more easily than intended. And they fixed an issue where AI could be stunned or staggered while retreating. They fixed an issue with hitting the Blood Mother Medusa with cleansing water throwables at the start of the fight could cause her health bar to never appear. And then for combat changes, they fixed an issue where players could take damage while blocking with the shield if performed after certain actions. They fixed an issue where the Void Blade basic attack could override triggering some of its abilities. They slightly reduced the homing of Hatchet's basic attack to address how sticky it is. They fixed an issue where equip load bonuses did not always persist after teleport. They fixed an issue where unnatural stuttering could occur for players when using the heavy attacks. And then they made these changes. This is one I want to really kind of highlight for you. Regarding target lock in PvP, they reduced the aim speed when target lock onto an enemy player, and they paused turning aiming at an enemy target when they dodge. I think that's going to continue to see various different adjustments to this system that's in place. I'd love to hear your thoughts about where it's at currently. Do you think these are some positive changes? Do you still want to see it removed outright, or are you actually in the pro target lock in PvP camp? I think, and I made the argument that I don't think they're going to get rid of it. However, I do think that it's going to go through rounds and rounds and rounds of balance adjustments to kind of get it to where they feel it's just right between PC and console players. For the UX, the UI, and the social changes, they fixed an issue where LB or L1 was not remappable as a shift modifier. They fixed an issue that caused the group HUD to show debug name when loading in player names. They fixed an issue that caused player names to not appear in chat. And they fixed an issue that caused nameplates to disappear and flickering on screen. And they fixed an issue that caused the respawn screen to not show killed by player in certain circumstances. And then finally, for the economy, progression, and gear section, they fixed an issue that caused Turkey-Lon infused turkey ward potion and infused turkey coating did not have proper event tags. They fixed an issue that caused several Nightingale hollow recipes not to have the incorrect resource cost. And they fixed an issue that caused the new Nightingale hollow pattern to have inconsistent required crafting trade skill levels. And so that's that. Those are the patch notes for 1.1.3. And that just kind of is going to take us to where we're probably going to see these little updates and hotfixes over the course of time. I do expect that after the Turkey-Lon event, we'll probably see 1.1.4 with more adjustments and the like. So there's a lot of things that are going on in here. I think it's in its, obviously in its, normal mode. And once we start to learn about the next season, I think that's going to be something that's going to answer a lot of our questions that we have. Whether you're a new player or a veteran, there's still questions. What is the future of this game going to look like? And those are questions that only the devs can answer. And unfortunately, we are in a holding pattern until they decide to break that silence. Now, as we wind down the video, feel free to jump out. We like to end up with our message of hope. Now, today's message of hope, I want to kind of highlight a couple of really cool quotes, because I think one of the things, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot, food is an important factor in your physical and actually in your mental health. For some reason, I found out that I was allergic to spinach. I didn't know it because I like spinach, but I was always having these negative reactions to it. So there could be something in your diet that's actually affecting your mood. And the only way you really can find that out is by, unfortunately, doing elimination diets. I did this as a desperation and because I couldn't lose weight. Turns out I had a hormonal imbalance. So it does require effort on your part to kind of drill down and figure out what the heck is going on. But if you're struggling with different things, honestly, I would just say be curious. Try different things out. Whether it's, hey, because who would think that spinach would be a thing? But for me, it was. So my body's weird. That's the way it is. That's a great quote. My body is weird. Not just is it ready, but it is weird. And so I want to open up with that as just kind of a reminder, is to get curious about your physicality, because we're all made differently, and your challenges, you might not have any problem, maintaining your weight. You might have problems gaining weight. Like, we're all going to be in different boats. And so for those of you out there who are especially having and struggling with mental health, well, I'd encourage you to focus in on, make sure you're getting, taking care of yourself. Therapy is a good choice. Being social is a good choice. Vitamin D really helps me out. All of these things, I just want you to be curious about who you are and kind of finding out what works. Because if you're miserable and you're doing the same thing and expecting a different result, chances are you're going to continue to feel that. You're going to continue to have that burden. And it's so much important that you don't take a permanent option to a temporary problem, even though this temporary problem, took me 10 years to figure out what the heck was wrong with me. But that means you can hopefully I can help shortcut that. But that's the food rant. There's the other aspect, is that we should also be consuming wisdom. And that's why I want to highlight a couple of quotes here as just a thing for your brain and for your mind to kind of feed on, as a way of hopefully motivating you to do all of the things that you have to get done today. First and foremost, our first quote comes from Martin Luther King Jr., who says, "The measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. And then Norman Miller says, masculinity is not something given to you, but something you gain. And you gain it by winning small battles with honor. And I think this pairs well with a quote, it's attribution unknown, stating, the mark of a real man is how he treats a woman. Respect is everything. I think this is a really good quote to counter what we see within kind of the dude bro masculine windows within certain echo chambers on social media about essentially women are property, abusing them. Like, that's always a good reminder. My coach always told me back in high school is that when you take a girl out on a date, you don't pay to hold her hand, you don't pay for a kiss, you don't pay for anything except for the pleasure of her company. And that sat really strong with me for the longest time and still does. But even though now I'm married, like, that is something very important for us, especially as men, to recognize, especially within ourselves, etc. Anyway, and then finally, I think this is going to be a great one to kind of send you guys on your way. The greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall. And I use this as a baseball analogy when I talk to you guys. Like, the best baseball players in the world fail 70% of the time. The thing is they keep getting up and taking those at bats. So don't let failure define you. Let it refine you. Don't let your suffering define you. Let it refine you. We're all going to be suffering. We're all going to have our struggles, and they're going to be different. And some of them are going to be the same. But the thing is you're not alone, and you never will be. As long as you continue to push back against the lies that our brains tell us, because our brains can lie to us. Crazy how that works. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me on this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today about all this stuff, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. But until then, take care.